The marking of 100 days in office by elected office holders may not be, strictly speaking, of Nigerian origin, but like any other thing imported, the country has so celebrated, idolized, and of course glorified this event that it has become a ritual. Ideally, 100 days in office is a yardstick for measuring performance. It is a barometer set sort of for determining the direction to which a new government in power is headed. 100 days in office also serves as a prism through which the citizens see to judge the motive, of course, and motion of their new leaders. Now, as Tinubu's administration hits its 100 days in office, in its journey striving hard to take Nigeria to the next level and, of course, delivering the renewed hope mantra. This morning on Daybreak, we will be appraising the 100 days of the Tinubu administration. And we're joined in the studio this morning by a member of the APC. Of course, he is a veteran journalist and is now on the other side of the divide. I'm talking about Malam Ali M. Ali. And I'm also joined in the studio by Baba Yusuf. He's a strategist, policy analyst, and, of course, the Group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. Ali, first of all, congratulations. But then, is it over?
Well, I hope it is. But then, if you have some resources to go down the drain, I guess, like some of them said, they're going to challenge the verdict of the presidential election petition court. So it's welcome. It's better than going to the streets. So it's welcome. It's a welcome development. Yeah.
So let's see how it turns out at the Supreme Court. Baba, so we've had a little bit of back and forth, I mean, on air and, of course, off air about the issues, and you've made certain predictions about how it is likely, to go. I don't want to call you a soothsayer anyways, but, you were so heavy on the fact that it would be difficult to prove facts, especially, when you remember issues like he who alleges has the burden of proof. I just want to get your take before we proceed.
You are very correct. Thank you for having me, Suleiman and Sagir and Sumaya. You see, two law principles as a student of law sticks to me with regards to the outcome of this particular petition against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the All Progressive Congress. Like you rightly said, he who has facts must prove. And then secondly, he who goes for equity should go with clean hands. If you look at or you listen to the narration of the judgment by the learned judges, I was taken aback by the fact that I thought, with due respect, the learned counsels of the presidential candidates of the Labour Party and the PDP particularly would have done a more thorough and better job. Why am I saying so? You hear, for example, inadmissible evidences, witnesses that are basically lying on oath, a presentation of forged documents, and you are expecting those to be taken on board and be admitted as evidence. In total violation of the Evidence Act and the electoral law and, of course, the Constitution. Like I was saying yesterday in another forum, the court is not Father Christmas. They do not gift or dash in the street parlance judgments. They render judgment based on the substance of your case and how the quality, the clarity, the specificity, and the unambiguous nature of your submission to defend the position that indeed you are the rightful winner of elections. And then also, sadly, I hope this is a learning point for all of us, the APM and even other parties. In this case, even the APC was guilty of it. People bring in pre-election matters that are totally out of the jurisdiction of the PEPC. And also, time-bound. These are matters that have already been, the time has lapsed. Of course, one may say it is fully within their rights to front-load whatever issues they have and to voice their grievances. But suffice it to say, if I was in the strategy team of either of these applicants that are now going to become appellants, I would rather do a better foundational job with a view to fighting a very big adversary that has now become an incumbent. So those are the things that I saw ab initio build up to this. Like you said, we're having conversations, and when we see the back and forth in the court, I was a bit taken aback. I thought there would be, I mean, you heard where, a witness, of the one party went to download information and basically commit perjury to come and say, and you hear witnesses that is in Kogi State and is now averring to statement of oath, having witnessed an election in Kebbi or Sokoto State. So to my mind, I think the applicants would have done something better. Maybe it's a learning point for all of us. Be that as it may, I'm not the lawyer. They might have known better, but the outcome has told us what has happened. Performance is not measured by events. Performance is ultimately measured by outcomes and results. All
right, before I come back to you, Ali, Baba, so we've seen the judgment, we've heard the verdict, and of course, it is well within the rights of, these petitioners to proceed to the Supreme Court to seek a review of the judgment of the PEPC. However, do you see, that is, if we could predict further, do you see the likelihood of the same thing repeating itself?
You see, from my standpoint, I find it very difficult to be optimistic in that regard, with due respect to the respondents. For the record, I'm not a member of any political party, but indeed I'm a Nigerian and I'm speaking within my civil rights and based on experience. This is elementary in law. There is no room to amend or to add facts or pleadings, as the case may be, as the case it is. It's a settled case at this first cost of instance with regards to the presidential election. It is going to the Supreme Court. So you are going to further argue what you have already submitted. And in my opinion, from what has been submitted by all parties, from what we heard, and to be honest, by the way, kudos to the opposition parties for insisting that this should be televised. Because if this was not televised, it would be subject to conjectures. Everybody heard word to word, letter to letter. I hear somebody even having the liberty to challenge how the judges were narrating it. I appears somebody wrote a judgment for them. Bottom line, the content and the quality is out there. So to my mind, I don't see much variance, with due respect, without prejudice to the learned judges of the Supreme Court, that things will change based on my own pocket knowledge of the law. Decisions will be taken based on what? The credibility of witness, the validity and quality substance of evidence, right? And in line with the provisions of the Electoral Act
and the evidence
and the Constitution, of course, embedded also is the Evidence Act. So if you look at it from this perspective, we hear arguments about people still insisting. Somebody said, why didn't the court, for example, issues of criminality and all that? The Embassy of the United States of America wrote, and it is part of the depositions submitted. And nobody has challenged that to say it is, fake. That the United States of America said this is not a criminal act. It is a civil issue. And there was no conviction. You can go on and on. The argument about Abuja FCT, Section 299 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, if I may read to you, is the Constitution. It supersedes any other act or law of the land, right? And Section 299 of the 1999 Constitution says, the provision of this Constitution shall apply to the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, as if it were one of the states of the Federation. And it goes on and on. This is unambiguous. This is very clear. But then, like I said, the beauty of democracy is that people are given the opportunity to exercise their rights. And as students of life, as a student of life or strategy, I'm very looking forward to the outcome of the Supreme Court. Maybe we'll learn something new. Thank you.
We're all waiting for that, and Nigerians are curious to see how that pans out. All right, now, a lot has happened in the 100 days. Beg your pardon, Madam Ali. A lot has happened in 100 days. I mean, we've seen the president make a lot of efforts, even though it's barely 2 to 3 weeks since he actually got his cabinet member all set up. After he mentioned that he was going to hit the ground running, which we saw it was a bit late, he started late. And there's been a lot of cry, even from the people who actually believe in the mantra, that's his agenda of renewed hope while others also, the people that have doubt about that particular mantra. What is your take on the 100 days of the president, with the cry of the people on the inflation rise? And we're talking about the videos trending about Lagos State University student crying out about the hike in school fees from 26 to 190 something, then some from 25 to 200. What is your take on that? Would you see progress?
Well, in 100 days, like you said, a lot of things has happened. A lot of water has passed under the bridge, like they say. Let me use that expression, that cliche. But also, in 100 days, you can see that the president is trying to carve an identity for his government, which to a lot of people, actually, they think is slow. As opposed to the first few days in office. When he took charge, he did something quite remarkable, which has not been done in the past. One of which is that he swiftly moved to change his service because it was within his prerogative as the commander-in-chief. And when he did that, the reception was quite warm in the first few days of his government. And if you just oppose that with the experience we've had in the past, when the former president, with due respect to him, he was lethargic in changing the service tips. And when he eventually did, there was a lot of outcry that it was not reflective of the diversity of the Nigerian state, that the service tips were actually more from a certain part of the country. And a lot of people felt resentment. But fast forward to 2023, when the incumbent president changed the service tips, a lot of people welcome them. They see themselves in them. And like I said, it was within his prerogative. But now the formation of the Federal Executive actually became a bit naughty, which for understandable reason is purely a political process. In as much as he has the right to pick and choose, but then constitutionally speaking, he had limitations. And there is a base minimum which he has to meet, and then of course there is no ceiling, and that's why for the first time we have some people say it's quite bloated, but then you have to accommodate a lot of interest. We have a record number of 45 ministers. It took a while, and sometimes it's not something that you wake up and you say. You have to balance first political interest and the imperativeness of inclusion, and that's perhaps explained in a way. In any case, the Federal Executive Council, which, like you said in your introduction, it took some time to form. As well, it came as a bit unsettling to some people. People thought that, yeah, the president was going to hit the ground running. He did hit the ground running, but when it came to the Federal Executive Council, you know, a lot of consultation had to go. Even at that, you see last-minute withdrawal. For example, the drama that happened in Kano nomination. You know, changes even just before the inauguration. Some swap. The Minister of Transport was swapped with the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy. So a lot of intricacies, a lot of balancing act. But in any case, look, the formation of a Federal Executive Council in these 100 days, 100 days in the life of an administration, I mean, that has plus minus 1,460 days. When you take 365 days, multiply by 4, you get that number, okay. 1,460. So you just spend 100 days, and people naturally, because it's a tradition, I think started by the Americans, I think Roosevelt. And then I think the French also have something like that.
Okay, that's a question right there, you know. The fact that we, this 100 days, is it too much expectation on administration?
Yeah.
Because it's a ritual now. Everybody believes that an administration
even
should
a local
have an
government
impactful
chairman,
change. Exactly.
a student union president does 100 days these days, and I wonder why so much pressure on the first 100 days. Can anything meaningful be achieved in 100 days so much that it affects the lives of interestingly, yes, it can, because I just came to my mind now on the first day. In fact, the president should have celebrated first one day in office, you know, with his inauguration and slapping us with the subsidy is gone statement that has put all of us in this situation. But by and large, The president seems not to be worried or disturbed about all of the chatter that's been in the polity. Most especially, we saw that the day of the tribunal judgment was also the day that the NLC in its magnanimity, decided to embark on its 2-day warning strike, which unfortunately led to the loss of power across many parts of the country, worsening the hardship of Nigerians. So the question here is, how much of an impact has this administration in the last 100 days had in the lives of ordinary Nigerians, such that it feels, that government is concerned about its activities? Because unfortunately, some Nigerians would say that they are suffering from the trauma that the previous administration has inflicted on them and have now ridden into another administration that is worsening their conditions.
Well, they say it's darkest before dawn.
But it has been dark for so long.
Yeah, well, you see, what's happening in Nigeria is not different. In Nigeria, economy is not insulated from global realities. Everywhere, even in developed economies, there are hues and cries of rising cost of living. Take energy, for example. All over the globe, energy cost is horrendous. Now, Nigeria cannot be, how much more a country that is largely, the economy is largely dependent, economy that operates at the level of consumption. That's why there is so much pressure on the nation's currency. So you expect that we're even compared to our neighbors, that you say, look, we're slightly better off. I'm not celebrating what we have now. And this is not an excuse. Given the vast resources we have in this country, the country could have done better. But years of waste, years of the low cost. Not for years, Nigeria has not been planning, will not be producing. We've just been hooked on consumption. Now, yes, the withdrawal of petroleum subsidy, a lot of people, I think, this is a personal opinion. I can't run away from the fact of my history as a journalist who has always been on the side of the downtrodden. But the reality of it is that subsidy, petrol, the way it was done here, it was a scam. I am for subsidy. Even now, the government is having, if you look at it, trying to stabilize the nation's currency, as opposed to the time that it allowed it to float. Now there is a real attempt to actually stabilize the nation's currency by making the the dollar
unification of the dollar.
The arbitrage that has happened in the past, the unification of the single currency, the exchange rate, it has happened in the past. But why did that lead us? Way back in 1992, I remember very well, there was the collapse of the exchange rate into one in 1992. From the dollar was exchanging at 8-9 naira. Then overnight, that's the official rate. After floating. After floating, it became 18 naira in the days of SPEM, second tier exchange market. But it did not work. You know why? Because our local industry, ordinarily, petroleum shouldn't be as expensive as it is now. Because crude oil is native to us. But because we don't have the refining capacity, we've allowed our industries, the refineries to lay atrophy, to waste. We've not been doing the thing that we should ordinarily do. Yes.
I'm happy that Baba is here because he's a strategist and policy analyst, and I'm aware that he has worked with a lot of multinational corporations, aside being, the former MD of the Nigerian Aviation Handling Company. So does this exonerate this administration? Because I'm sure that this is what is going to be on the minds, of a lot of Nigerians right now. Does this analogy exonerate the current administration from delivering democracy and from delivering good life?
Just barely 100 days in office.
That is why I want Baba to answer the question. That is why I want him to answer the question, because by and large, he also buys fuel. He bears the cost of living, and he also feels the impact of all of this. The other day, I was speaking with my mom, and she informed me that a measure of rice now sells for about between 1,300 to 1,500, and a bag of rice now sells between 48,000 to 55,000, depending on the market that you are buying. So, Baba, does this exonerate the current administration?
Well, first of all, let me step back a bit and contribute to the 100 days conversation, which has become more or less a corporate and leadership culture. While Well, one may argue that, is it really relevant? I think it is relevant from the point of view of putting pressure on leadership to deliver, so that people will not become complacent. You know, there is this anticlimax after winning elections, for example, in the case of political office holders, and even in the corporate sector, in the private sector, you become an MD, CEO, or chairman of the board, you know, you are happy, you have that high. There's that tendency of complacency creeping in and the sense of entitlement enveloping you. And you see it time and time again. You know, the good thing about President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is, I said it somewhere, I saw some of his handlers being sucked into this lethargy of complacency and entitlement.
Power corrupts.
Absolutely.
And absolute
so this 100 days, to my mind, is good. It remains, you know, a pinch, you know, a reality pinch on the leadership. Within this context of this conversation, Mr. President or the governors will be on their toes, and for the right reasons. For over 8 years of an APC administration, the country has been drawn back over 15 years. So it is only logical and fair that citizens have serious high level of expectation. First of all, from the president, because of his personality, because of his antecedents, and because of the moment. Global economic, socio-economics and insecurity headwinds all over the place have added to the already self-inflicted injuries of lack of strategy, lack of policy coherence and whatnot, and corruption, of course. So Nigerians have been suffering these vagaries. And then here we are, we have a new, you know, the good things about Nigerians is this, we are majorly optimist in nature. And much as we may have issues with something, we are able to suck it in, tuck it on board and say, let's see how it goes. And in fairness to the citizens, yes, we need to demand for good governance. And to that extent, we cannot exonerate the APC government from this issue. And that's the fact. Two, it is only normal that the expectations on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is as high as it is. It is a plus for him because, first of all, to whom much is given, much is expected. And then two, it tells you the kind of person, both allies and adversaries, the kind of premium they put on this person. And that pushes up the expectation. Of course, the hunger, the strife, the poverty is pinching Sagir Somalia. And to that extent, it is only logical. Whether or not President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should have removed subsidy on inauguration day is a conversation for strategies and is left to the minds of everybody. If you ask me, I totally agree with the position he took. This is a serious issue that has been, Nigerians have been caged by a group of vested interest. And from history, if you go back as far back as the military era, the oil and gas cartel have been holding us to ransom. This fuel queues, I can remember Babangida administration, Abacha's administration, as the kind of personality Abacha was, we were still having fuel scarcities and queues. So you need to constructively disrupt this issue. And that is what he did. The only snag there is, there was no clearly defined strategy and action plan for the short term. Because this is a policy that has to exit. And if you go back and see, as policy strategists we know, critical policies like this will take 7 months to 1 year to impact. So knowing that, the strategists should have thought it out to say, we need to have a shock absorber short-term strategy for the people of Nigeria because they deserve it. All right? And that has crystallized anyway. But the good thing is the president has been always listening and retracing himself. Some people say it's a weakness. I see it as a strength. That we have, for the first time in a long time, a president that will take a decision and is not shy or ashamed to backtrack or to change. That is strategic. That is, right to do. It is better you correct yourself. First of all, you are demonstrating that you are a Democrat. You listen to the people. Secondly, you are demonstrating that you are not shy to make mistakes because you can quickly correct them. with minimal damage or impact to the polity. So the subsidy issue will remain an issue. It is a bold move, forward thinking, but then Mr. President will struggle with this for a bit of time. It is a make or mar decision. Constructive disruption will have to come with levers that will stabilize the policy. Don't also forget that the vested interests are at work, and they will continue to frustrate the process to ensure that the we told you so will happen. So I call and I urge Mr. President to continue on the track, but to ensure, like I said, the palliative policy should be expanded beyond palliative policy, and you should have peripheral vision on this, because we don't want to end up with a palliative-driven economy, running out of a subsidy-driven economy. And the empathy Mr. President permeates should also cascade to the Federal Executive Council and including the special advisors. We want to see in their communication strategy empathy, compassion, sensitivity of the sensibilities of what is going on in the country.
Now,
right,
mentioning palliative, you know, a lot of Nigerians are of the opinion that they're not really okay with it, because it won't be able to reach everybody that is supposed to get that palliative.
I totally agree.
At the end of the day, it's like, you know, just bring in an issues, you know, with the whole difficulty in the economy, and still the main people that are supposed to get, because we've seen situations of natural states where we saw people of the is in Nasema, you know, actually hoarding this food and selling it off the market. So what do you think the administration need to do? Because we're seeing their goodwill. Okay, we want to be able to help cushion the effect, but still there are already people in the process, you know, trying to block that, just like you mentioned earlier. So what should the administration do?
There should be a deliberate, consciously thought out action plan for these palliatives. Palliatives must be part of the shock absorber, short-term strategy and tactic, like I was talking about. I said it when Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. President, for listening. When he mentioned the 8,000 naira, some of us kicked against it, he stopped it. When the palliative was rolled out by the National Economic Council, I was one of those that wrote in a column, and I said it out loud that when I did the simple arithmetic, it's going to impact less than 10% of the 133 million multidimensionally poor Nigerians. Now, that number as of last quarter of last year has increased though, because of the economic headwinds, because of the removal of subsidy. Right? Now, this palliative, as the case may be, if you look at the safety nets already put in place, the methodology of the deployment, the total package itself that has been given to governors is an issue. And I will use this opportunity to say, you see, this is the time to test the quality of leadership at subnationals. We should move away from this dogma of always looking up as if we are looking unto God, one man called Mr. President, to solve all the problems of Nigeria in a truly federated state, where we know every month these people come and collect part of their subventions for the subnationals, including the local government. So the states, like I think I need to mention this, commending the governor of Borno State, who came clearly to add over 10 billion to the 5 billion that he was given, to say, this is what I need to expand it to see how we can impact more on the people. So beyond the presidency, the palliative conversation should be taken to the subnationals, and we will want to see the emotional intelligence and the sensing capacity of governors for their people to come out with ways and means to ensure, first of all, the safety net is wide enough to capture those people, you know, the downtrodden, the vulnerable in their societies, and then also to do it in a transparent and accountable way, like you mentioned in the case of Nasarawa, in a way and manner that people will really appreciate what is going on. We know that the money is not there. The states are indebted. But again, I believe every state has no business being poor and being in this situation. So to my mind, the palliative conversation should be expanded, and there should be no excuse by any governor. So I call on Nigerians to expand our vision with regards to this issue. Not just looking up, we should also look right at our eye level where we have their excellencies, the governors, and also the local government chairman, even though the local government chairman...
In terms of that sharing, speaking of the local governments, we also have district heads and the emirs and all that. And some people are of the opinion it would be better, to reach out to these people because they tend to know who the vulnerable are. Do you think that's a wise decision?
What is important is the transparency of the process, Somaya. Over time, the political class works with the traditional institutions and all those people you are talking about. And at the end of the day, in most cases, not in all cases, you see these institutions sorting out themselves and leaving these people. So if there's transparency, those people that were hoarding will not hoard. You can even send it to the district head. If it's a bad district head, he will hoard it also. So if you have a transparent process and that has identified who are the most vulnerable. I saw the chairman of the committee said by the NEC, Chukuma Soludo, His Excellency, was rolling. They said they are working on social register. We don't have time. Every governor in his state won election. How did you win election? You win election because you understand the terrain of your state. And we don't want to see them settling their political allies and what you call political foot soldiers. So we want to see the genuineness of leadership as subnational, to be honest, like you. The transparency of the process and how you widen the net, because I hear a lot of conversation with respect to the organized labor. Sorting out, I saw the salary increment by Nasarawa State Governor. What about the most vulnerable in the hinterlands? They don't have account. They don't have any access to car or bus that you are going to bring that has CNG or whatever. They are with their donkeys and bicycles in the village. So we want to see that safety net expanded in a transparent manner so that the moment people see that, there will be a reverse empathy and a reverse psychology for the people to say they are trying, let's support them.
All right, so let me reel out some of the policies in the last 100 days that this administration has put out, starting with, of course, the removal of fuel subsidy. There's also the unification of foreign exchange, also the signing of the electricity bill. There's the recruitment of more security personnel, initiation of infrastructure projects, establishment of a new economic advisory council, the launch of a new anti-corruption initiative, the Operation Zero Tolerance, and initiation of a national dialogue on security, improvement of education system, initiation of affordable housing program, among many others. So, Alali, how soon should the Nigerians in the hinterlands, like Baba mentioned, how soon should they expect to feel the impact of their franchise and right to vote, of giving the mandate to the APC for a second time, despite the challenges which a lot of them would say that they experienced during the previous government?
Well, certainly perhaps in the next 100 days. It takes a while, like he said, and I must say his arguments are very compelling, persuasive actually, and spot on, I must say, yes, and dispassionate. Now, for some of these policies to actually manifest, to clearly impact, it's going to take a while. There's an incubation period. And then when you cross all your T's and then dot all your I's, these things will go. But then another thing, again, which is important, is very, very crucial here. You see, until we have the necessary data, well, I listened to his argument. We don't have the time. We don't have the luxury of time. This government doesn't have the luxury of time, but then you can plan ahead. Mm-hmm. What I mean is that, like when they say Rome wasn't built in a day, you have to begin from somewhere. And when you have the right policy framework, then is the implementation. Well, for the history of Nigeria, policies have never been a problem. Laws have never been a problem. It's the implementation. And this is where the political class, more often than not, conspire and then frustrate all the provisions of the law, all the provisions of the policy. Like he said, and which has happened. We've seen that happen with the Uncle Borrower scheme. Governors actually supported. Like a
journalist that you are.
No, yeah, exactly. No, but you see the thing, the truth. You just, a spade has only one name. A spade. Yes. You understand? So now look at it. If you get this policy framework and then you implement it to the latter, you get there. Most people are the subnational, and then this fascination with the center. It has always been our bane. We are fascinated by the center. At the subnational level, a lot of underperformance. People don't care. You find someone from my local government concerned about who gets what at the federal level. Meanwhile, at the local government level there, a lot of iniquity is going on there. And like we know, some of these traditional rulers, even the clergy, at the level of conduct, they leave a lot
to be desired.
So really, and I think this is where again, with time, with this right policy, because whatever you say, you have to give the incumbent president the credit for being a visionary leader. We've seen that happen in Lagos. When he was governor of Lagos, he actually set the tone for a modern Lagos. His vision, well, some of the things he conceived at the time outlived his mandate. But because he's like an eagle, he had a sight for the future. He managed to influence and then handpick successors who realized some of his vision, one of which is the metro now. It took years for the metro to come into fruition. But because he conceived it, if you can conceive it, then you can do it. Then you implement it. Like he said, there is a lot of expectations. The president promised big in the course of the campaign. Look at his Renew Hope agenda, the vision there. Some of the goals are quite lofty goals. They are achievable because at the subnational level, he's done that. So you begin with the right policy framework, then you move forward. Then give it time. If you are faithful to that policy, we get there.
So how has this current administration been able to manage the pressures and expectations to deliver, you know, going with the fact that the previous administration didn't really do much, as some Nigerians would say?
No, you see, this president, it's a matter of size. He's an engaging president. He's busy. Rarely you see policy reversals or a position reversal in the past. I remember very well, way back in the 70s, the federal military government at that time inadvertently and mistakenly announced two great eminent Nigerians for different positions, given their professional calling. Ademuchi Roma was supposedly sent to chair the board of the Daily Times, which at that time was a behemoth. Daily Times was a behemoth, a big media company. But inadvertently, given his background as a historian and as a journalist and former managing director of also equally big newspaper at the time, the New Nigeria, he was sent to the central bank. He had no training in finance or accounting. And then Aliko Mohammed, who had made the name as a renowned accountant at the time, was sent to head the board of the Daily Times. And then the president and commander-in-chief at the time, head of state, was said, look, that was a mistake. He said, no, let the land. The government doesn't make a mistake. You can't attribute yourself the
qualities
attributes
of God.
Yeah, of divine attributes. But look at it, he said it. And I'm echoing what he said. The first time the president's attention was drawn to the 8,000 naira palliative, he had a change of heart. He had a change of heart in the nomination of ministers. This tells you that this is a listening precedent. In the past, we've had instance, the immediate past commander-in-chief, in a way, a great Nigerian. But then, when it comes to leadership, he came short. Leadership is not about emotions. It's about doing things. Leaders, what they do, as opposed to managers. Leaders do things right. You understand? As opposed to managers. No, leaders do the right things. Managers do things right.
That's right.
You understand? So doing the right thing, engaging, and you can see the incumbent president has been engaging, listening to people. Of course, there are instances where some people, if you don't have your way, you will say that. But by and large, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you are to rate his listening ability to get feedback and to act on those feedback, you rate him slightly higher than the past presidents that we've had. So, yeah, give it time with time and being faithful to the policy, you get there. But it's going to be a long, long walk because most Nigerians are used to doing things right. And like you said, there are fifth columnists, there are people on the sideline, on the fringes waiting to say, oh, I told you so, it's not going to work. The harder you work, the more some people will be bent on sabotaging whatever noble policy there is. And then they're there, the oil cartel, the mafia. Is there? It's real. They have the local variant, absolutely, and then they have the global variant. Absolutely. And Nigeria's oil, unfortunately, is so attractive because we have so many loose operational process. People come in here, how the instances where foreign ships will come, dock, lift our oil,
The House of
disappear.
Reps says Nigeria has lost around 46 billion between 2009 and 2020 to oil theft.
And I think that is even conservative estimate. One account said, look, we've lost trillions of naira.
16 trillion.
Exactly. So you see, and then why these people, they are not ghosts. They must have their local lackeys, people who conspire at home to sabotage the nation. And then they're bringing them to book. They are so powerful. Look, let's not kid ourselves. They're very powerful, they're well connected, and some of them you never can tell. They can even help prop up the government.
So what should Nigerians expect to see in the next 100 days?
A lot of action. When the government has fully taken off, a lot of action. See, sometimes people think is when you do things on whimsically. No, you see, there are a lot of ways you can skin the cat. You understand, so many ways. But one of which is that you've been faithful, and then if you fail to deliver, because this government is going to give, in fact, give targets to all the ministers, all the heads of the department, MDAs. There will be targets if you fail to deliver. Either you ship up or you ship out. That's the thing. And given the trajectory, the administrative trajectory of, experience of the commander-in-chief, we've seen that happen in Lagos. Lagos, take it or leave it, is a microcosm of Nigeria, a mega city. With all in Lagos, you find a lot of Nigeria. And then look at those he helped, those he brought to help him administer Lagos while he was governor. Some of them, they are leaders in their own right, outside of him. So it tells you that yes, he still does have eye for talent, but also there are also politics brought him into office, so there are political considerations sometimes. But like I said, political exigency would not compromise under Bola Tinubu's watch the imperativeness of good governance. And more than anybody else, the burden is on him as commander-in-chief, because he promised big to deliver, to perform well above average.
And he said nobody should have pity on him because he signed up for the job.
Yeah, he knew what he was coming in for.
Okay.
Yes.
Conclusively, so Baba, he has mentioned what to expect, but based on your analysis of the last 100 days, what are your own projections for the next 100 days?
From my own experience and the little I know about the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and how any leader, any president that will perform or achieve is supposed to plan. The first 100 days will be a mix of majorly planning, setting up frameworking, foundation laying, frameworking and planning. And then while you are at it, achieving what you call the quick wins, the low-hanging fruits, which is what we are talking about, the palliatives, the shock absorbers, having the ministers in place. Brilliant what we saw. He left the country on Monday to the G20 summit. Bam, 48 hours later, $14 billion investment commitment for Nigeria. Now, those are all for the mid to long term. So I reckon in the next 100 days, if you like, the next quarter, I expect to see more sure-footedness and more impact, socio-economic impact. Importantly, security. We want to see quick wins with regards to security, because security is the nexus of the success. It's a critical success factor for this government. Food security is an issue already. People have been chased out of their farms. We have climate change issues, but importantly, we know even the closure of the border with Niger have already impacted. The Northern Economic Forum told us 15 billion naira weekly. These are all impacts. Northern Nigeria remains the food basket, not just of Nigeria, but of West Africa, interestingly. So we want to see impacts, quick impacts, short to mid-term in the next 100 days to quarter, 3 months, to see that, because you see, there are some things that you can't just do within 1 week. And if you want to do within 1 week, Nigerians should say, don't do it. because it will not be sustainable, and sustainability is key. So I will look forward to more performance. He has given targets. He says he's going to run a performance-driven Federal Executive Council. He's a performance-driven person. You know, he cut his teeth in the private sector. He's a consultant, he's an accountant, right? He's a businessman, and he's a political leader. And all the while, execution quotient has been his, you know, one of his greatest attributes. So we expect to see that upscaled at the national level. I know there are teething problems for someone that is a superstar at the subnational coming to lead a complex, dynamic country at one of the most difficult time in the history of Nigeria, highly polarized. While we are at it, there's something that I think Mr. President needs to start speaking about a little bit more with higher volume, because I know he has it embedded in the renewal agenda and he has told us about it. The sensitivity of Nigeria. People are unhappy, not just because of poverty. They are not happy with the government. People are feeling isolated. They are feeling, you know, disgruntled for whatever reason. We are highly polarized, and the elections have shown. We should not forget. The number of people that did not vote for Bola Ahmed Tinubu is higher than the number of people that voted for him. He got over 8 million votes. If you combine the votes of the opposition, combined is over 14 million. So that is also supposed to be a wake-up call for the APC and for Mr. President. And I am sure he's conscious of that. Like I said, I was very excited to see that commitment, investment commitment. Foreign direct investment is going to come. We are going to have more inflow of dollars, and then it's going to help us to also stabilize our naira moving forward. And he has become the chief marketing officer of Nigeria. So we expect more of that, but importantly, not just by Mr. President, we want those ministers to also perform so that their input will be his output for the betterment of Nigeria.
Quickly on this question, speaking on the ministers now, let's talk about briefly education. You know, it's hitting hard, you know, and people are complaining, just like I mentioned earlier, about the cry of students about the hike in the school fees. Yes, let's not forget, even I think the Edo State University, a lot of students coming out there. So what do you think the president should do? Because he's mentioned the loan, the student loan, but people are not really keen on that. People don't really understand how that would actually benefit them and not put them in a long time, you know, debt. Exactly. So what's your take on that?
The distilling and refining of that concept of loan vis-a-vis formulation or rather improving the already signed off law, the policy with regards to student loan, actioning and implementation is going to be very key. The ministers have a job cut out. I think they will be, in the history of Nigeria, they will be amongst the set of the most tasked ministers. And to be honest, I don't envy them, especially with the kind of president they have. It's not going to be a walk in the park. Talking about education is very dear to me, because while Mr. President said, and he has demonstrated, that he's going to take the youth serious because they are the drivers of the future of Nigeria. In his appointments, we are seeing it. But importantly, also, it has to go back to the education. This thing you mentioned is a very serious issue. A lot of people, students will leave school. So the ministers have to now come with a plan, with a strategy to say this is how they intend to deal with this issue. First of all, the cost of education, which is a function of the cost of living. Let's not forget. It is the ripple effect of inflation. It's the ripple effect of the economy that is hitting everywhere. But then that shouldn't be an excuse. Like you said, Mr. President said, don't have pity on me, but I think we can have a little of sympathy for you, but we will not pity you. The expectations are high, and we believe there will be ways and means to manage this. Government is a superpower. There is a way Mr. President can bring succor to the students of Nigeria, to the pupils of Nigeria, because it is so bad that you are talking about university. Go and see what is happening at the primary school level. You will cry. So we hope that this minister and Minister of State for Education will demonstrate suitability in the next 1 month for them to come out with an action plan to say they need to deal with the issue of cost of studies, they need to deal with the issue of ASU, they need to deal with the issue of quality of education, and we want to see for the first time what is our national education master plan. How does it key to our national development plan? We hope these ministers will all have their own, modular strategies that will key into an overarching strategy. That is the only way we can have deep and wide impact into our polity. Not people working in silos and looking for quick wins and telling us we have delivered. Nigeria is too big for that. We want to see delivery because people have voted you into office, and the team that have been appointed also need to be prove their worth.
All right, Baba Yusuf.
Thank you.
Strategist, policy analyst, and also the Group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company, as well as Mala Aliyam Ali, veteran journalist and also a member of the APC. I want to thank you so much for sparing time to join us on the program and sharing your perspectives on the 100 days in office of, the current administration, and as well projections for the future. Thank you so much for joining us.